afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the regularly scheduled Taber Town Council meeting for October 15th, 2019. If I'd call the meeting to order, please, and ask for an adoption of the agenda as presented. Councillor Garner?
I move that we accept the agenda as presented.
Thank you. Motion on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to item number 3, adoption of the minutes. Item 3.1, minutes of the regular meeting of Council, September 23rd, 2019. Mr. Armfield?
The meeting minutes from September the 23rd are there for your consideration. Any changes, please let us know. If not, they're ready for adoption.
Thank you. Any questions or concerns arising? Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Firth?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the Council adopts the minutes of the regular meeting of Council held on September 23rd, 2019 as presented.
Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to item number 4, business arising. There are none. Bylaws. Item 5.1, emergency management bylaw. Item 19-2019. Mr. Armfield.
Yeah, Deputy Chief Cote will come up and present this one. It relates back to the changes in the some provincial legislation that we have to follow up with changes to our bylaw. Deputy Chief Cote, please lead us off.
Thank you, Mr. Armfield. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys very much. So as Mr. Armfield stated, these changes are based back to the 2018 change to the Act, the Emergency Management Act that happened. A few, as I highlighted, a few of the changes that are being put forward today are some changes in a definition, changes to the Emergency Management Act, the Emergency Management Agency outlining who by position will be taking those positions, as well as for the Director of Emergency Management and who will be taking that position based on his position as well. And the last one you'll see on there, ladies and gentlemen, is for the state of local emergency. So who has the powers to declare those? So we made a little bit of a change there to make it a little simpler. As you guys will remember, when we tried to do that in the past, it was a little tough getting a hold of everyone to come in. So in consultation with the AMA, they decided maybe we were a little restrictive, so we made that a little bit simpler for you guys as well.
All right, thank you. Any questions whatsoever? All right, someone prepared to make a motion. Councillor Tams.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move that Council gives first reading to the Emergency Management Bylaw 19-2019 at this meeting.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Sorry, I've lost my page again here. All right, so there's a second reading requirement also. Someone prepared to make that second motion.
I'll make that second.
Councillor Stravas.
Second motion that Council gives second reading to the Emergency Management Bylaw 19-2019 at this meeting.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And the third motion requirement. Someone prepared to make that motion. Councillor Bruin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make the motion that Council gives unanimous consent to proceed to third and final reading of the Emergency Management Bylaw 19-2019 at this meeting.
Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. And the third and final reading motion. Councillor Garner.
Mr. Mayor, I can make that motion. The Council gives third and final reading to the Emergency Management Bylaw 19-2019 at this meeting.
You have motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you very much. On to action items. Item 6.1, 2020 amendments and 2021 to 23 budget narratives. Mr. Armfield.
Yes, I'm going to call Mr. Orwa up to guide us through this probably fairly lengthy item. The plan will be for Mr. Orwa to direct traffic. He's going to introduce the changes to the 2020 budget first. And then once we go through those amendments, he'll be asking all the directors and the respective people to come up and discuss their narratives. Mr. Orwa.
Thank you. Mr. Orwa.
Thank you very much, members of council. So today's budget presentation, I've divided it into two segments. So the first segment will be looking at the 2020 amendments because the 2020 budget has already been approved. And then the second part of it would be looking at the budget narratives, that is 2021 through to 2023. Now, we will follow the order on the attachment. If you look at the attachment where there's an order that I've already given, that will be following. And I think you could see after the 2020 proposed amendments will go through the police and planning all the way to finance at the bottom. Now, but before I give them the opportunity to showcase, I would like to inform Council of a few areas to put into consideration as we explore the 2020 through to 2023 budget. Now, first of all, we have the insurance. So insurance, we are still using the 2019 rates. We're just having a projection there because we don't have the rate yet. It will be coming maybe by end of October. Second part of it, requisition. Just remember that we are still using the 2018 rates. Again, we are still waiting for the provincial budget, so there's nothing coming up through there. Now, with that in mind, I think probably we'll first of all go through the 2020 amendments. And for the 2020 amendments, there's an order there, fire, then coming down to HR, and they're quick ones because they're just one-line items. So for now, I think I'll pass over to the first one, which is the fire department. So I'll call for Chief Monshaw to just walk you through those two line items.
Worship,
Chief Monshaw.
ladies and gentlemen. Well, we have actually a wonderful start to this whole budget process. We're actually reducing and giving money back for this next year. So as the movement forward started with the provincial or the post office coming into fruition, we're moving the post office and emergency service building together. This will end up coming into some revenues being brought back to council, to the main fund. You'll notice that there is a little offset though. There is some janitorial, there's double maintenance for gas and electricity that is going to have to come out since we're going to be occupying 2 locations for a term, and then the snow removal with main janitorial into the building. But at the end of the day, we bring back to council $81,794.25 for general coffers. Any
Right,
questions, ladies and gentlemen, on 2020?
Thank you. Any questions arising? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
So the first reduction is WCB rate. That's a reduction in our rebate revenue from them as a result of increased claims cost for this year. The second one is a Sidehawk database program for our SDS program, otherwise known as MSDS, chemical data sheets for all the chemicals that we store. Every facility, every department has a database, which is kept in binders right now. This is an electronic database where they will keep it updated for you for the entire town. So it's a subscription. And that subscription, that fee is the first year fee. After that, it goes down about $1,200 for each year. Any questions?
Councilor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sir, I noticed a reduction of the WCB rebate of $5,000, and that's due to too many claims. Is that what you said?
Yes, high claims.
High claims?
Yes, we have a couple of claims that are fairly large, yeah.
Councilor Towns.
This Sidehawk electronic thing for MSDS sheets. At the end of the day, what's the big savings to have a subscription to somebody doing this when you can actually download most of that information yourself? Now, if you have it in binders, are we really simplifying, or are we just adding a nicety? Like, because every supplier supplies MSDS sheets per your request. So, is it that onerous to have that many of them around, or do we have that many chemicals?
Each department has its own binder system, and we need to keep that up. And historically, we haven't done a very good job in keeping that up. it's a nice to have. It's not necessarily a necessity. It kind of brings us into the 21st century as far as having that database updated, and then they will update it for you each year. If you have a new chemical come in, they will put that chemical into the database. Employees can search that database anywhere in town. They could put it on their iPhone. They can search it on their iPhone as well. So it makes it more accurate. That list will be accurate continuously versus our binders, which have to be updated annually.
Follow-up question. And with the current legislation, MSDS, if you have your staff on smartphones, which I believe the town of Taber has their staff on smartphones, the requirement to have MSDS sheets on file is not as onerous as it used to be, as long as they have access to the internet and to get MSDS. Like I understand the nicety of the program and how simple it is, but I'm wondering if it's really a necessity when the availability of that is right there on your smartphone. You can get that MSDS sheet anywhere. And do we really have to have it now by law?
You have to make it available to the workforce, yes. So you have to have it in some sort of capacity, right? So the capacity we have it is in our binders, right? So a person wouldn't look up the MSDS free sheet from the manufacturer. They would go to the binder and look at it, right? And then we would update that binder. That's the current system we have. We could stay with the current system. This is just a little more updated. Like I said, it's 21st century. You can get it anywhere on your phone, anywhere you are in the town. So if you decide it's not necessary, then it's up to you.
Councilor Bruin.
Just a question, is there an annual cost to having this program, or?
Yes, so the annual cost is about $3,300. It's a little more just for the first year, and then it decreases about $1,200.
All right, anything else arising? Okay, perfect, thank you.
Cheer.
Good afternoon. In IT department, we have one line to amend the budget. It's annual support and maintenance for software. New softwares we purchased this year, and the amount is $21,300. I'm working with the finance to reduce that cost, and hopefully we can get there before the final report.
All right, thank you. Any questions at all? Perfect, thank you.
So the next one is the library. And we've proposed an increase to the library of about 50,000. And one of the reasons where I got that number is we looked at the last few years, how much they were pulling out of their reserves to offset the costs. And if you look at the last one, if at all they still had those reserves, they were going to pull at least over 40,000. And based on that, we proposed 50,000 just to offset that one based on what they could have pulled out if at all they had money in their reserves. So this is just a proposal. Mr. Armfeld, maybe if you want to add something.
Yeah, council has heard the request from the library. In order to provide a starting position for that, we looked back in what they were typically pulling out of their reserves, assuming that they would have had a reserve to pull from this year. It was in that 40 to 50,000 mark. So that's where we've started council with. This is your budget amendment, though. You can direct us higher or lower as you wish.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? All right, perfect. Thank you.
The next item is council.
All right. Do you have any other comments with that, or just what's written on our page?
Yeah, essentially what's written on our page, the council remuneration and benefits that took a change this year with the increase in pay that council had changed earlier in 2019. And then with regards to the trip to Japan, we had to capture that as an increased expense. And so that is being proposed here as well.
Great, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Broom.
Can I just ask what is the expense for the Japan trip in that number?
I believe we put in 15,000.
1,000.
For the Japan trip, and then the council remuneration is the rest.
Thank you.
Anything else arising? All right.
Next would be planning.
Your Worship, members of council. So as you can see, with regard to the revenue, there is a decrease in revenue proposed of $10,000. These are funds that are provided from the Municipal Cannabis Transition Program, and it's actually not a decrease, it's just we're moving it to a different GL, so it's moving over to the police rather than the planning budget, because it's felt that that's probably where the impact mostly is in policing, right? So with regard to revenue, we're looking, or expenditures, we're looking or proposing to run a census in 2020. The town has not had a census since 2016 when the last federal census was undertaken. It was in the budget for 2018, but with the changes that occurred within the planning department and our leadership there, the project was not completed. So the next town proposed census is in 2021, which is the same year as the next proposed federal census, which means it will likely be late 2020 before any population figures are released. So if we could hold a census in 2020, we can then have a more accurate idea of population, and if there are increases, this will make us able to access more government funding. It will also run it at the same year as the MD's census, which will also give us that awareness out to the public a little bit better than if we run them on alternate years. It'll be less confusing for the public. And planning has also included in this operations budget the cost to lease a vehicle for planning use. We've also included in the proposed capital budget, so we'd spoken about that before as a placeholder, but we wanted to give council just the option to either utilize it as a lease or just an outright purchase. So just a little bit more option that way. It might be determined it's better to have a newer vehicle if we're showing prospective purchasers land in a town vehicle. So we could lease a different vehicle every 3 years on a leasing program, whereas if we purchase, then we have an outright vehicle, but always benefits either way. That's it for changes to the planning budget. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Towns?
Yes, can you give me, what's the breakdown of the census? What's the cost of the census?
Through His Worship to Councillor Towns. We actually I went on the 2016 budget amount for $25,000. There's a consultant fee. We utilize the services of the City of Airdrie. They provide us with the laptops or the iPads for census, as well as a program that they created that a lot of different municipalities utilize. And then there's the staffing requirements. So we'll have to hire temporary workers just to go out and perform the census, and they're paid on a per household amount. So we just actually went with exactly what was identified in the 2016 budget and the 2023 budget. So there may be some savings depending on how the costs work for the project.
So a follow-up question, Mr. Mayor. So roughly $25,000 for the census, and then the other 8 is for a vehicle is what we're proposing. Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Strauss?
Thank you. That was the question I was going to ask.
Oh, okay. Any other questions arising? All right, thank you.
Good afternoon. As you see, our revenue has increased due to the fee bylaw increase of $231,932. Our expenses went up. Well, we brought the water meters into the operating budget. That no longer in the capital budget. That's $50,000. And then the landfill increase. Our projected landfill from garbage from other municipalities, somehow a bit of an accounting error. Went from $270,000 down to $213,000. So we're just asking it to be raised a bit, because that's where we need to be, about $230,000. So there is a saving there.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Perfect, thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of council. So we're proposing a change of revenues, an increase in revenues of about $30,000 just with the additional programs we're looking at with our new ACE position and some pool programming. On the expense side, we've added a line for a gas line and heaters in Confederation Park for our programs. We're seeing a lot more happening in the park, so I'd like to enhance that experience. Some additional training dollars. We've got a new management position plus myself and another new manager in position, and we'd like to give more training opportunities for our staff, so some increases in training, which account for about $15,000. Some programming expenses, including summer program busing and PD days, to expand those programs, offer day camps when kids aren't in school, and expand our summer program. We feel that a lot of those revenues we're seeing, the increase in revenues would offset these costs. So it's not adding more expenses overall, we'd add more revenues by expanding those programs. We budgeted for a wheelchair lift in the auditorium. We're not sure exactly what was budgeted, but it definitely wouldn't cover the entire cost. So we increased that cost to $30,000 from $5,000 to replace that wheelchair lift. In here, there's also a cost of leasing a vehicle. That's actually a cost savings from capital. We had budgeted to purchase a vehicle, and instead we've chosen to start leasing some of our vehicles since we really need a much higher number of vehicles in the summer months, not throughout the winter months. And then there's some additional trout pond expenses by adding irrigation and bathrooms. We're adding electrical expenses as well as septic removal. So it's about $18,500 in trout pond expenses. And one staffing expense, a reclassification of a position at the Aquatic Center from lifeguard 2. We're proposing, now that we have one full-time lifeguard 2, that we'd like to move her up to a higher position as a head guard, given her extra responsibilities that we've been utilizing her for.
Great, thank you. Any questions or Councillor Thames?
This might sound like a dumb question, Don, and please accept it as that, but you know, if you're looking for a part-time vehicle and planning's looking for a part-time vehicle, is it the possibility that we could get one vehicle and you guys could share it?
The only issue is in the summer months for those from that May to August, we really need them full-time. It's challenging. Those months are very challenging. The remaining months, we have extra vehicles. So, and we're no issues lending one out for travel for other departments, but those summer months is the challenge.
Touches me is coming out. I'm just thinking outside of the box.
No, I
Thank
get
you.
it. Yes, yeah. We're almost still short in the summer months, so yes.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yep, perfect. Thank you.
Texas Police.
Mr. Mayor and Council, good to be with you as always. Good afternoon. Trust that you've seen the documentation in front of you. Just a couple things that we would like to point out in regards to 2020 and really the overall 3-year rolling budget. As we all know and as we're all aware is we've had previously the approval for 2 new officers to go to 17. Some of those initial calculations in regards to the initial impact to the 2020 budget and the 3-year rolling budget were much higher than what we've realized. As you can see on the screen there, we're really around $60,000 is all. Some of that has been offset by a revenue increase. Several years ago now, the Commission was tasked with looking at a better revenue stream for ourselves, and that continues to grow and continues to go forward. We have been able to reduce the overtime from 12% to 10% and hope that even through the addition of these 2 officers that will continue to reduce as well. So we really feel that is a good news story. We continue to remain as frugal as we possibly can on the things that we do have our fiscal responsibility for, and we continue to work for the extra training, the extra responsibilities that we had through our strategic plan in regards to our leadership capacity and some of those pieces that again have been required of us of the strategic plan. So we feel it's a really good news story in regards to some of the previous discussions that we've had.
Thank you. Any questions arising? All right, thank you.
Very much, members of council. So that marks the end of the first segment, which is the 2020 amendments. Now we are moving to the next one, and now our objective is to have those budget narratives before council, and we're just going to follow the same order there as per the attachment. And I think I'll call upon the police to get back to the podium.
Thank you, Mr. Orwa. Mr. Mayor and Council. Really, I don't know if there's a whole lot more to add than I've already just stated. Just a couple things I guess I want to point out in regards to the commission and the chief of police, the Taber Police Service as a whole. Again, continue to look at ways to be able to gain revenue. That is reflected here. To be able to stay fiscally responsible. That is here following our strategic plan. That is documented here in this narrative. We do know that there is a wage increase due to the negotiated wage increases that have happened in 2019. Those will be realized in there as well. And again, we are wanting to increase our leadership capacity within the police service, keep abreast of the current trends in policing, and to be trained, we need to be trained in the field sobriety testing and drug recognition expert training for cannabis and other federal statute changes. As we know, some of these legal changes with cannabis is definitely having an impact, and we're wanting to make sure that we are doing everything that we can. And unless there's any other questions, it's really as presented.
Mr. Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Holst, how many of the officers in Taber Police Service are DRE qualified?
If I could, Chief Abella come forward and be able to answer that for us.
Sir, currently we have one officer that is DRE qualified, that's Constable Balgertson. The push from the province is to have 30% of your officers DRE qualified at a cost of about $15,000 an officer. There is federal government money that is flowing to the province, but it has not been determined yet how that's been allocated. We do not know what that's going to be. We will make applications at that time, if that comes, to try to benefit from that as a community, but that's our hopes.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other questions or right? Perfect. Thank you, Chair Holst.
Good afternoon again. With regard to the 2021 to 2023 program, Planning and Economic Development are proposing projects such as the South Taber Area Structure Plan. Potential South annexation costs may occur. Architectural style guidelines, gateway signage design and installation. We will be doing some amendments to our land use bylaw as well as our MDP. Potential redevelopment strategy for vacant railway lands, and a business and retention and investment plan as identified in the Joint Economic Development Plan. As well, we have the census reoccurring in 2023, which is another $25,000 depending on actual costs. And then in this proposed budget, we have the vehicle costs added to lease every year, and then operations costs. So if we decided to have a capital expense or decided against purchasing a vehicle, there could be amendments to those operations costs related to vehicle expenses or the leasing. And those are the proposals for planning.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Perfect. Thank you, Ms. Monks.
And Mayor and Council.
Good afternoon.
So Council will notice an increase to our admin service operating budget for negotiated wages and the sewage tank drainage, which was previously in the Public Works budget but has been moved to our facilities maintenance line. And I'm sure you'll be happy to see a few decreases as well, stemming from a renegotiation of water rates for the golf course, as well as less budgeted for our leased properties. As we continue to upgrade our facilities, less budget will be required. Council will also see a capital budget increase that reflects administration's wish to develop the southern portion of Row K in the Tabor Memorial Gardens in order to ensure planning growth for the cemetery.
Any questions arising? Thank you, Ms. Brennan.
The next would be the CO.
So hitting the highlights of my proposed budget increases for 2021, there's been some life cycle things identified that are exhaust fan sorts of HVAC sorts of requirements to this building. So there are life cycle types of purchases. We can certainly push those out if we don't keep them. The other one that's been identified is some carpet to make the carpet on the other side of the wall here all consistent. When we did the renovations to facilitate the meeting room on that side and the mayor and council room, we did not carpet the CAO office and the manager of administrative services and the photocopy room. So that's been, there's I believe a $20,000 proposal in 2021 to do that work. So those are the major changes to going forward to the CAO line items. Everything else is consistent though with responsibilities and work duties.
Any questions arising? Perfect, thank you.
So again, costs associated as per the direction from council for the 2021 Alberta Japan Twin Municipalities annual conference to host that. 2021 of course is the election, so there's expense there to actually undertake the election and some training for those people that would be participating in that, and some increases to 2021 are proposed with regards to the external agencies that council funds, those being the Handy Bus Communities and Bloom Chamber of Commerce, Museum Society, and Food Bank.
Thank you. Any questions arising? Perfect, thank you. Mr. Orwa. Good afternoon.
So 21 has a big increase. Tabor Police Service proposed another IT position that will be shared between IT and police. So there is an increase in salaries, wages, and benefits to include that position. There's also increase in training for that additional member. And as always, increase in software and annual license. Every capital project has an increase in the operating to reflect. And 22, 7.34%, that's normal increases for software and licenses, again to reflect the new projects for 21 and 22, including the cloud adoption. And 23 is 1.22%, just annual maintenance fees increases as usual.
All right, thank you. Any questions whatsoever? Councillor Tams.
How many software licenses does the town of Tabor hold? Do you have a total?
Softwares we have?
Yes.
Over 120 software.
I mean,
over 120, yeah. Whoa. It is lots.
Thank you. All right. Thank you.
So the first one is engineering, roads and walks. You can see a slight increase in contracted general services. That's due to fuel, oil, all the snow and everything is just causing havoc on that maintenance on the vehicles. That's all it is. And the rest is just basically an increase to wages. So we move off to utilities. Any questions with roads and walks, engineering? Nope. So we move off to utilities then. For stormwater, we are asking for one position, and it'll be split between stormwater and wastewater. We've reduced contracted general services and bringing more of that work in-house so that there be no charge to the taxpayer. All that money is done internally, so it just goes from one GL to another GL. But we'd like one more person to take over from the contracted services. So you can see in stormwater, there basically is very little changes. We've even reduced it a bit in 2021, bringing more work in-house, doing more of that ditch maintenance and culvert maintenance. If you look into water, we looked at basically it's straight across the board. There is an increase, and we start building up in 2021. You can see 11% increase in water. That's due to raw water keep going up. We keep having our raw water from the irrigation district up and up and up, so we're just bringing that more into line. Wastewater, you'll see an increase of 4.33%. Most of that is interest on long-term debt. I'm working with Mr. Orwa to see if we can reduce that. We think there's a bit of an error there, but majority of the rest of the increase is just to increases in labor. So we're basically across the board with our budget. Solid waste and risk collection, this is the one that takes a big hit due to RFPs coming up in 2021 for collection services. We're working with our contractors now. We actually think we can reduce that significantly, bring this back for you. But if we had gone with what they've told us, and they told us there'd be a huge increase in 2021 after that RFP, that's where we would be. So we're just going off of what our contractors told us.
So that was based on their
initial
estimate that what they wanted, and then after negotiation, it's going to be.
It should be significantly less.
Thank you.
Yes. So that's our basically our budgets for utilities, roads and walks, engineering.
Councillor Beckery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Scheer, you mentioned a reduction of the contract to general services to offset the new hire you are thinking about doing. Can you give me an example of the contract to general service you might have used in the past and won't use any longer?
Well, we usually do a lot of contracted spraying for weed control. We're going to bring more of that in-house, where it's only for about 2 months that they do the spraying. Well, for that cost of that 2 months, we can get 8 months worth of labor out of our guys, and they can do the same service. Another one is cleaning of sump pits. That's all been contracted out, and I don't know why, but we found that. We were going to bring that in-house because we have a vac truck. We have a sump truck. So we'll bring between those two. We have the equipment. I just don't have enough personnel.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Scheer.
Thanks for having me back again. So we turned into the 21 budget where we talked about before, rolling out of the old fire hall into the new location, able to reduce that budget again, stabilizing only one utility sector, and we bring ourselves back down into a $42,000 revenue recurring back to council. What you see in 22 and 23 is basically an increase in two areas of wages and slight increase in material and goods. Other than that, any questions?
Questions arising? Thank you, Chief Munchville.
So overall budget increases for recreation. As I mentioned in 2020, that continues on after that with an increase in expenses for the programs that we're running. Those will be offset by revenues. We'll also have several more events and whatnot going on in the auditorium with our new ACE coordinator position. And again, those are typically offset by on the other side with revenues. Operating, so we have several projects that we're highlighting in 2021. Some upgrades to the health lobby, which is one of our lease spaces in the auditorium, furnace replacements throughout the facility, tennis court upgrades, flooring repairs in the arena. There's a product called Real Ice that I'm proposing. It's a system you put in your ice plant where you can, instead of using really super hot water to flood your ice, you can actually use cooler water, and then instead of your floor being really cold, you can actually increase it, so it saves on electrical and gas prices. I have installed it in the past with some really good experiences from it. spray park backflow preventer and urban forestry plan, as well as filter tank replacement. This was actually budgeted in 2019, but we felt it could be pushed back a couple more years. It was budgeted based on life cycle, but we felt it could wait a couple more years. Trout pond development, we do have budget for trout pond in 2021 and 2022 of, 2020 and 2021 of $300,000, and 2022 is $250,000 for the remainder of that project. Your typical staff increases with step increases and COLA. And then some of the larger items in the capital budget, which we had touched on in the last last council meeting, included your life cycle replacement for equipment, tot table at Spray Park, concession upgrades, and some playground enhancements. So that's the highlights from my department.
Any questions arise? Councillor Chavez.
Don there. Can you give a brief explanation from bank charges interest from 4,400 to 9,000?
Sorry, which one? Oh, I don't enter that line. Sean, Mr. Orwell?
Until we drill to find out exactly what's going on there, we'll not be able to give a direct answer to that question, but you can make a follow-up. Because we need to drill into that line to ensure that that information is correct. Put in consideration that we've added additional terminals.
I don't think.
So then you'll be getting back to us then on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions arising? Thank you, Ms. Phillips.
Just checking. Good afternoon. So 2021 sees an increase again due to the anticipated decrease in WCB rebate, and then the cost for the Sidehawk subscription if it is so approved. 2022 sees an increase due to hiring an external auditor for our core audit, which is done every 3 years. It's a one-time charge.
Great, thank you. Any questions arising? All right, thank you, Mr. Zuskin. Mr. Orwa, last but not least.
Yes, I put this one last because finance has the smallest budget. So it's one of those small budgets and everything is consistent. You could see the only increase there is just as a result of the COLA increases and step increases for staff. And then a little bit of some professional development.
Mr. Towns?
Just because you have the smallest budget doesn't mean you don't get a question. I really want an explanation on the other expenditures of $1 every year.
I would put them as errors to correct the errors.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Any other questions arising? Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Orwa.
Thank you very much.
All right. Any other questions overall arising? Two recommended motions. Someone prepared to make a motion. The first motion. Anyone? Councillor Firth.
Mr. Mayor, I move that council approves the 2020 operating budget amendments as presented.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And the second required motion recommendation. Councillor Bruin.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make the motion that council accepts the 2021 and 2023 budget narratives presentation for information purposes.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, on to item 6.2, franchise fees. Mr. Armfeld.
Yeah, I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Orwa again. As part of our yearly budgeting process, we have to determine what the franchise fees are going to be for our shallow utility providers. Mr. Orwa, please take it away.
Thank you very much again, members of council. So the premise behind franchise fees is that the town is giving these two private corporations the sole right to deliver electricity and gas. Now, the key areas to council at this point is normally when we bring it every year is to revisit the rider, the percentage that we have. Because at this moment we do 20%, which is the max that is out there. So it's upon council to decide whether to, let it stay at 20% or reduce the 20%. And then the other part of it is out of the revenue that we collect, the 20% revenue we collect, we again direct 7.5% of it to Energy Conservation Fund. And I think we do have, if you scroll, I think I've attached riders from other municipalities so that they see how they vary from one to the other. Those are the riders now. You can see some people go for even as low as 3%. There's also 0%. That means they don't collect any franchise fee. And these franchise fees, if you look at your bill, daily bill, you'll be seeing them. I think they call it local access. You'll get 20% of your transmission and delivery charges. So that is the distribution there we have for our riders from different municipalities, and it continues. There are quite a number of them that goes for 20%, 50%, 15%, and many others.
Great, thank you. Councillor Strabos.
Yes, Your Worship. Mr. Orwa, can you tell us how much is in the Energy Conservation Capital Reserve Fund? The 7.5% that we allocate every year from that 20%?
I think at the end, I have my figure right in my head, is the end of as we are approaching 2018, we had about 496,000. And then in 2019, we're going to add whatever we're going to collect into 19. So we collect about, like if you look at the 2020 proposed, 20%, if you calculate 7.5% of both ATCO and Fortis, we'll get about 140,000. In 2018, we budgeted for about 130,000. So that's what we're going to add into the Energy Conservation Fund.
So just as a clarification, we got $500,000 sitting there in an energy conservation fund that we keep adding to. Perhaps it's time this council reduce that, drop that fee down to 15%,
I think just
putting 2.5% into that program.
As a point of correction, the part of it has already been earmarked for fire. If you recall, when we were funding the fire area, part of it was over 400,000 was earmarked for the fire, the building.
So how much of that is earmarked?
I think it was about 400 and it's slightly over 400,000.
Okay, for energy efficiencies.
Correct.
Okay, but we keep building that fund up. Is still my point. And I think it would be time for council to revisit that and perhaps drop that down to 15%, putting away 2.5% every year. I bring this up every year.
Councillor Becker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I must confess I did not discuss it with Councillor Strobos before. I had exactly the same thought, just reading this on the agenda this weekend, that I think the Energy Conservation Capital Reserve, I think we're in danger of using it for other purposes. And I think we should reduce our franchise fees to 15% and the other one to 2.5%. I wholeheartedly agree with Councillor Strobos.
All right, thank you. Any other councillor or Mr. Arville?
Yes, if council is considering doing this, Mr. Orwa, would you like to provide council with some background information of the implications to the 2020 budget?
Yes, so it's not an easy process because first of all, there is some advertisement that we have to go through. We have to advertise, and they've given us templates, the process to follow. And then they also have some deadlines there that these advertisements have to take place, and it's about 2 weeks before, and then we attach all the changes with the council motions until it goes there. So what that means is we can 2020 is almost, we are almost overtaken by 2020 by events. Maybe 2021 we can think of that, but 2020 there's some implications already.
Yes, sorry, Mayor and Council, for this conversation we're having right now, but I think we can probably accommodate it in 2020. But if council is heading in this direction, administration would recommend that at the next council meeting, we bring back some information on the implication to 2020. So if you're considering not passing the recommended motion in favor of another motion, please give us the opportunity to bring you back the information of how that would impact 2020. I'm sure we can accommodate it in 2020, but I just want council very well aware of the decrease in revenue that we would experience in 2020 and how we might have to accommodate that.
Just to add on top of what Mr. Armfelt has talked about, if you look at the current, the attachment, when you add both ATCO and Fortis together, now it's a total revenue of about 140,000. So that means that 140,000 has to be reduced by the percentage, by 5%. So it's going to have that impact that Mr. Armfelt is talking about. So we'll see how it's going to affect the overall budget in the next session.
Mr. Becker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the thought by Mr. Armfelt is entirely proper. I think administration should be tasked to bring some information back to council to make a proper decision regarding the suggested discussion here.
Yeah, very willing to do that analysis on behalf of council and take your direction. I just think it's prudent to do that prior to making that change.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Strauss?
Not a question, but then I would make a motion to defer this to their next meeting, if that's acceptable. Don't need to defer it, because we don't have to, we can just go by without passing a motion on this.
Just for clarification, Mr. Armfelt, are you okay with that?
I would like to have in the form of a motion where council is thinking of headed. So if you are thinking of dropping it down to 15% and then only having the 2.5% go into the energy conservation capital reserve, let us do that analysis and bring that back to you. But give us that direction through the form of a motion, please, that is exactly what you want to do. We'll probably add some options onto that, but so we can hit your target, please set one for us.
So an investigative informational format for administration motion. All right?
Correct.
Thank you. Councillor Becker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I suggest that no motion is required, and I still kind of believe that, but I can go along with that motion. But the motion should not state exactly, in my opinion, what we should be doing. We should be asking administration to investigate the implications on the 2020 budget going forward on a reduction to the franchise fees. So to leave it open for options to be presented by administration and for council to discuss, because just because I might agree with this or Councilor Strovis doesn't mean the other 5 of us will agree with it. So let's not have that battle tonight.
Okay, so just to clarify, that was in the form of a motion?
No.
You just said?
Councilor Strovis can make the motion.
Okay, actually it was pretty good overall.
I forgot already.
Okay, Councillor Strauss.
Then that council asks administration to investigate the reduction of the franchise fee to 15% to come back to the next meeting on its budget implications.
All right, thank you. Mr. Armfelt, that's got everything covered.
Just for clarification, so you are only touching the rider percentage, not the energy conservation fund percentage.
Well, I would think administration would bring that forth, and so if we drop that to 15%, we can allocate that percentage at that time on the budget implication.
Yeah, we'll have to bring that recommendation back, because this isn't going to work out to the exact dollars and cents that you and I know where this is going to head. Right.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? Councillor Thames?
Yeah, and I understand the gist of the motion, but we're deferring something so we can look at it the next time, and now we're going to set a goal, but that goal maybe should be a whole lot broader. And I'm going to suggest that goal is to bring us the options to go from to 12% to 16%, and adding 1.5 to 2.5 into the energy stability fund. That way we get a broad picture of what we're looking at. So if we reduce it to 12% or to 16%, but at least we have the whole range of what we're looking at. And if we just pick a goal of 15%, we picked a number. Then we might as well just say, well, let's just pick a number, and that's what we're doing. I would like to see it from a broader range, from 12% to 16%, and from 1.5 to 2.5 into that fund. And at least we have something to look at with real numbers.
So Tams, is that a friendly amendment?
That would be a friendly amendment.
I accept your friendly amendment.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Kerr, are you okay with everything that was suggested there as the amendment the friendly amendment portion? Okay.
Mr.
Councilor
Mayor,
Broom.
could we hear that motion back again? No, just because I'm not clear on where
Yeah, we can put it on the screen. I'll just need a minute.
Okay, please.
You're ready to go there. I'll push the buttons.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Brew.
Thank you. Since we're waiting, I wonder if somebody could tell me what the intent for the Energy Conservation Capital Reserve is. What's the intended use for that?
So I don't believe, so just to jump in there.
Sure.
Okay. I don't believe there was ever actually a policy associated with it. This was set up by two councils previous, just as a way to have some money that was being directed to an actual reserve that was dedicated for efficiency, essentially. So if we were collecting this money from the use of gas and electricity, then let's put some money in a particular savings account that then would be contributed towards reducing our footprint, so to speak, our consumption rates. And so the number was very much just chosen by the previous council. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Brown.
Kind of follow-up question of Councilor first. So how much of the money have we used out of that account? And for what projects to date?
I believe the very first use of the money out of the account will be for the emergency services building.
Just correction, did we not
and-
use that for upgrading the lights in the?
Oh, and yes, and some light. It has been used for some seed money, for some grant matching money for lighting and.
I thought we use it for soft start motors and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, we'd have to bring that. Yeah, we have used. We'd have to bring it back. I mean, the big item that we've used it for is for sure the emergency services building. There's been other,
I think with all the new innovations coming forward with solar heating and power and all that, having a energy conservation fund, it would be worthwhile to stick with it. So as we're waiting for the motion on the table to come up, I'm going to say that I have to support the motion that is recommended here, that we keep it as it is because it's working, and if we cut the money here, we're going to have to take money from somewhere else. So in my mind, this is works the way it is.
let's see if this works. Oh my goodness.
Voila.
I think that's pretty much says it.
Covers all the bases, Mr. Armfield, as far as you're aware.
Yes, we can certainly work with that. It's council's motion.
All right, thank you. Once again, a friendly amendment motion on the table. Any further discussion? Councilor Brown?
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor. Why are we doing 12 to 16%? That's just a number. Why don't you start 20 down and work down different rates, like 20%, 19%, and give us the whole work? Like, where did 12 and 16 come from?
I can possibly answer that. That was a requested friendly amendment by Councillor Tams that we not set a staunch figure, that we have it a flexible to see the range where we could go and what kind of monies that could be retained.
But why between 12 and 16? Why not from 20 to 0? I don't understand why you picked 12 to 16% and 1.5 to 2%. Why don't we look at all the ranges?
I think because I suggested 15% and he was trying to be a little more flexible of giving a range from 12 to 16% so that there would be 4% there for administration to take a look at some figures.
Mr. Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly these are just numbers, right? Numbers are easy to bring up in a recommendation to administration, whether it's 1% or 12 or 16. It doesn't matter. I think administration understands the spirit of the motion. As long as you understand the spirit of the motion, let's get on with it.
All right. Once again, friendly amendment motion on the table.
I just wanted to say that probably I could assist the council with this by having variations, because it won't take me long, having variations from between 10 and 20, and I'll have all that large variation.
We'll do that. That's good. Okay. All right. Friendly amendment motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. All right, on to item 6.3, VFD high lift pump replacement. Mr. Armfield.
Yes, this one is for Mr. Scheer is coming up. Looking at replacing some pumps, Mr. Scheer.
Yes, thank you. So we're looking at replacing a couple of high lift water pumps. The first one is at the Chin Reservoir Pump House. Due to vibration, it needs to have a replacement. The other one is not functioning. There is another backup there. The second will be at the potable water treatment plant. We're replacing a 60 horsepower with a 75 horsepower with a VFD. The current one does not have the VFD. So we asked our 3 suppliers for treatment plants, Hagen Electric, Integrity, and Sago, to provide us information on these pumps. You see the amounts they supplied. The differences were that Hagen supplied an 8-inch pump where the rest supplied 10-inch. That basically offsets the whole price. That if you brought it up to 10-inch, it'd be about $95,000 anyway. The big thing for us was the time frame. Hagen was from anywhere from 10 to 18 weeks, and Integrity is from 3 to 4 weeks. So at this time, we're requesting that council award the pumps to Integrity. I should point out that the town is acting as its own general contractor on this job. So this is not just the extent of this job. So there will be additional electrical, plumbing, mechanical, and a little bit more engineering costs. The total cost of the project is about $175,000.
All right, thank you. Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Scheer, what was the budgeted amount for this?
$200,000.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
So you're going to come below.
So we'll be a little bit below, about $25,000 below.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Bruin.
Just a question. Would this be something that the Energy Conservation Fund would be used for, because you're putting in more efficient engines or motors?
I don't know if there's exactly more energy efficient. We like the VFDs. There was no VFD on the one for sure. That could be a part of it because it does save energy on that, yes.
Mr. Stravas?
Yes, Your Worship, to Mr. Scheer. So is this a priority item that's got to be done right away because this pump may fail, so we can't wait the additional time for the lower price quote?
Exactly right. 3 to 4 weeks, especially for the Chin pump station. We're starting that up now. We only have one pump that's working down there. So redundancy is needed. If that pump goes down, we're looking at grabbing a portable pump, putting it in. So the 3 to 4 weeks is very necessary. That's our main concern.
Thank you.
Mr. Scheer, just a question about the age of the pump you're looking to replace. Any idea how old that one is?
They're 25 to 30 years, so
okay.
their life cycle.
And the backup is just several years old?
The backup?
Right. The backup that's there now is several years old?
No, well, no, they're both about the same age.
So that was
Some
due
went
also?
down and some didn't. So like, you know, they continue on, right?
So this backup is probably going to be due also?
Well, the one backup, we have a portable one. That's probably only about 3 years old.
That's the backup, the portable?
yeah.
Okay, okay. All right. Thank you. Councillor Thames?
I don't see it in your RFD here, but does that include mounting and balancing?
That includes mounting and balancing in the pumps, yes.
And
But-
after they're commissioned, are they balanced again, or
Yes.
are they done once?
We always balance after with the shaft, yes.
Both.
Yes.
Both times. Thank
Both
you.
times.
Okay, motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 6.4, Power Up Conference. Mr. Armfield.
Okay, Katie, you're coming up. Please go ahead and discuss the Power Up Conference.
Good afternoon, Council.
Good afternoon.
As you're aware, administration was approached by Business Link in the spring to host a Power Up conference in Taber. We brought that idea towards the Joint Economic Development Committee, and it was decided that it would be a regional project. So we created a committee, and we've been working towards the conference since then. Power Up was created by ATB, the Government of Alberta, and Business Link in order to bring conferences like this into rural communities and support rural communities in a way that larger cities have been supported for quite some time. So we have planned our conference for November 7th and 8th. November 7th will be just a networking event. So there'll be a chance for business owners, council if you choose to attend, and business support services to get together to network. It will be sort of a trade show style, so there will be booths for business support services around the room where they can set up and discuss more about what they can provide to business owners in our region. And then on November 8th, it's a full day conference. So we'll have breakout sessions, there's gonna be lunch and snacks provided, and then there's more networking opportunities and a couple of keynote speakers. One of them is actually somebody who grew up in this area, Whitney Turcado. She received funding from Arlene Dickinson, which is a member of the Shark Tank TV show, and so she's gonna come talk about her experience and just her story in general, which will be a really great one for the region to hear. What else do I gotta tell you? Tickets are $50 for our early bird pricing, and that is ending tomorrow. After that, ticket prices do go up to $65. We, as the town, are going to receive 4 tickets. One of those tickets will go to me so that I can make sure everything continues to run smoothly. So we do have 3 more that can be utilized by council or administration however you see fit. And that is because of our involvement in the committee, also as a JEDC member, and then we are considered a platinum sponsor due to my time on the event and the fact that we will be using a town facility. So if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer.
Questions arising? Perfect. Thank you, Katie. Oh, sorry. Councillor Burrow had one here.
I have no questions, but I need a ticket.
Okay. Sold.
Right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Someone prepared to make a motion. Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the council accepts the Power Up Taber conference update as information.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to item 6.5, Council Project at Federation Park. Mr. Armfield.
Yes, I believe we have a update to the motion the council made to plant some more trees and install some benches in Confederation Park. Ms. Phillips is here to update some of the pricing on that. Go ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips.
So the motion made on August 19th by Councillor Garner was to install 5 picnic tables and 20 trees in Confederation Park, not to exceed a budget of $14,000. As you can see, the quotes came in at $23,928. That was with direction to have everything contracted out, as we didn't have the internal resources to complete the work by the initial timeline. As this is over the $14,000 budget, administration is requesting direction on how you would like us to proceed.
Right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Strauss.
Yes, Your Worship, just I have some problems understanding why the cement pad in installation would be $11,000. That seems to be for 5 benches. That's $2,000 a bench. Seems to be fairly pricey. And I know this has been contracted out, but well, I don't know. That's
We received 2 quotes, and that was the lower quote, including installation of the benches. So pouring cement pad and building the benches, I believe, actually, and installing the benches. Now, if we were to do this in-house, that section, we could probably, in speaking with Mr. Scherer, we could probably absorb those costs internally, but depending on the timeline for the project.
so. Am I gathering that if this was done over the winter and staff put the tables together over the winter and we installed them in the spring, we could do this in-house at a considerably less amount? I think probably the answer, Your Worship, here is to change the date and let our public works do it whenever they can get it done, rather than put a time frame in, because it's certainly a project worth retaining. And if they can fit it in somewhere, I think we should go that way. It's my thought.
All right. Do we want some clarification from Mr. Scherer, possibly?
So naturally, this all depends on the snow removal. And it's a big part of our winter, but we did have that conversation. We could easily precast the pads and then fly them into place with a little bit of sand and mount them. And that gives us work over the winter. It all depended on snow removal, right? I personally, I don't see any problem with us doing it over winter. We always have somebody ready for that. We've done quite a few precasts, so. With parks involved, they can set up the benches and we can do the pads. So I think it'd be a good joint venture.
All right, thank you. Councillor Chavez?
Mr. Chair, then, so the worst part would be that if we had a polar winter that your crews are busy, we'd have to take a look at doing it in the spring and contracting it out then. I think I could live with that.
Thank you. So someone prepared to craft a motion in that regard?
Sure, I'll take a crack at that. I would make a motion that we extend the time period in which to accomplish this project until whatever you think is a suitable time. April 30th, June 15th, May 1st, sold. That would be my motion.
To do it in-house.
To do this prefabrication in-house. Because I think it's an important project, but I think more importantly, maybe from council's perspective, it's important that we stay under budget. I don't think we want to go over budget, so.
I could ask for clarity. So would you like us, just in terms of the budget, being in this year's budget, get the trees installed if we can this year, purchase the benches, and then just install by spring?
Yeah.
Or as able? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. You wanted to clarify the within the budget amount, the $14,000 budget amount?
14,000, yeah.
In your motion?
Sure, and we'll stick with the original $14,000.
All right. Ms. Kerr, everything good there? Okay. All right, motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 6.6, disposal of municipal documents. Mr. Armfield.
Yes, so according to the FOIP legislation, we are required to destroy documentation. Longest time we have to hang on to things is 7 years. Looking to purge ourselves of some of these. Do you have anything to add, Ms. Phillips?
Ms. Hembro is actually going to speak to this one.
Ms. Hembro, lead us off.
So after being in my position for about 4 months and going through all of our documentation that we had stored, there was documents from as far back as 2002 that we no longer need. Anything that we needed I scanned or saved. As well as the pool had documents from 2012. They keep their documents very organized, so they knew exactly what needed to be shredded this year to keep their 7 years up to date.
Thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. question, I guess, for either Ms. Hembrow or Council or Mr. Armfelt. Can't we just do this automatically when the time period elapses?
The legislation indicates that we have to bring a recording of the documents that we are going to be shredding to council. So we have to present you with the list, which is attached to this. And I'm assuming there's a list attached to this. I certainly hope, though, I can find it. But there is a list attached to this of all the documents that we need to shred. And that's what the FOIP legislation says, that you actually have to give us the authority, so to speak, to shred those documents, or we have to make you aware of it. It's a circle back piece, so that we just can't shred stuff without you guys knowing it, essentially.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm prepared to make a motion.
All right, thank you.
That council approve the destruction of documents identified in the attached list for the retention period in years identified in Schedule A of the bylaw number 10-99, retention of municipal documents.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 6.7, procurement policy. Mr. Armfelt?
Yes, and Mr. Orwa is coming to present the procurement policy as per council's direction to hold off on this until after AUMA.
All right, thank you. Mr. Orwa?
Thank you very much. So at the September 9 meeting, Finance Department brought proposed RFD for council to approve the revised procurement policy. And after much discussion, there were two key areas of concern. And those are the areas that we'd like to address today. That is the local preference and the award process and authorization. Now, we've attached quite a number of documents, but I think at this point I would call Ms. Parsons to join me, because she has made a lot of calls to verify some of the things that we were talking about last time. And as probably she's going to share with you some of the municipalities that we called and how we can move forward. Now, can you scroll a little bit to the table? Yeah, that one. So I'll let you pick it from there.
Good afternoon, members of council.
Good afternoon.
So I tried to prepare a bit of a chart here, but I also included the narratives actually from the policies so you could read them if you wanted to. This chart I tried to summarize just based on the comments and the questions that we had, what other municipalities are doing. So you'll see the town of Taber there. The first column shows local preference, and you can see that there's probably about a 50-50 split on some are doing local preference. Say to a maximum of a certain percentage or a maximum number of dollars. If we decide that we want to go that way, we want to make sure that we're advertising that when we do it. Our proposal is up to $25,000, as was in the original policy that we presented a couple of weeks ago. The right-hand column shows authorization for anything greater than $75,000 within budget, which seemed to be a questionable item from last council. The majority of the policies that we looked at do have authority to the CAO, that council's responsibility is in the approval of the budget, and that's where they have the opportunity to question and see what we're spending. If they want to make adjustments to the budget, then that goes through the budget process. And that's what the majority of the municipalities that we looked at were doing.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Tamps.
I don't have a question, Mr. Mayor, but I would like to make a motion to defer this to our October 28th meeting in closed session regarding Section 24 of FOIP. I believe that we as a council need to gather some more information, which I don't have at the time, but I would like to make a motion to defer to our October 28th meeting in closed session, please.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried now. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Parsons. Item 6.8, proposed flag protocol. Mr. Armfelt.
Yes, and I believe Ms. Brennan is coming back to speak about the flag protocol. This is coming back due to a bit of an unforeseen challenge we had with council identifying the United Nations peacekeeping group in town, allowing them to half-mast at the Legion, at the Cenotaph, sorry, the Cenotaph flagpole. And we just want to make sure that we haven't excluded anybody, so that's the major change, am I correct, to this procedure, that this policy and this procedure, just to identify the fact that we haven't given the United Nations group the exclusive rights to raise and lower the flag at the Cenotaph, but that is still a shared responsibility amongst many groups.
Good, thank you. Ms. Brennan?
And I would also note that we also put within the changes that notification has to be given to the town staff, so we know when the flag is lowered, because we quite often get questioned and we may not know why. So that's just a circle back to administration.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Tams?
Just after looking at this, and I understand why it's coming back, but the list that we now have at the Cenotaph location, we believe is complete. We're not stepping on toes anymore.
I certainly hope it's complete. I will probably find out tomorrow at around 10 o'clock if it's not. But based off of the calls that we have made and that we have received, we are certainly hoping it's complete now.
Just for some clarification also, so notification to the town, yourself mainly, that you would be notified as a result for the date request, but any of those organizations would have a key to take care of that. We as a town wouldn't have to
Correct.
Send a staff member to send.
They have access to it.
They
Yep.
will do that.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right. Any other questions arising? Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Garner.
Mr. Mayor, at this time, I'm prepared to make a motion that council adopts the flag protocol policy C-9 as presented.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 6.9, proposed land sale, policy ECON-1, Mr. Arnfield.
Ms. Monks?
Mr. Mayor, members of council. So administration continues the review of policies in order to ensure that they are up to date and accurately reflect operating procedures. With regard to the proposed land sale policy, this policy actually combines the process in the existing land sale policy and application for subdivision on the purchase of town-owned lands policy, which are on the agenda today for repeal. Administration has updated the policy in order to ensure that the sale of municipal lands follows applicable legislation and allows council the ability to control the disposal of municipal land.
Thank you. Any questions arising? Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Until you stated your point, I did not understand this. Now I do. I'm prepared to make a motion.
Very well.
That council approves land sale policy ECON-1 as presented.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 6.10, policies proposed for appeal, engineering and public works. Mr. Arnfield.
Yeah, we've got a number of these coming as per the strategic plan. Go ahead, please.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. So we have two policies here that we have reviewed. They're quite old policies, and neither of them we need anymore. The sewer backflow preventers policy, since the time of that policy, the National Plumbing Code of Canada has added in a code that requires a check valve be installed. So this policy is kind of redundant now, so we ask that you repeal that one. And the private use of municipal equipment policy, we now have a schedule of fees for our services and equipment that's been added into the fee bylaw. So that's also redundant. So if you could approve those repeals.
Questions arising? Councillor Tams.
Just maybe you can inform me, like the sewer backup policy. So if somebody had a sewer backup and that policy said that you had a sewer backup, now you have to put the backflow valve in at your cost. And I know that they've changed the plumbing code, but to an existing house that doesn't have a sewer backup valve, when they have a sewer problem, when it gets fixed, are they not supposed to put the sewer backup valve in?
This is for stormwater, not for sanitation.
Yeah, it's just the stormwater.
Makes really good sense to me now. Thank you.
Did you get that?
No, I didn't. Idiot.
All right. Thank you. Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm prepared to make a motion. The council repeals sewer backflow preventers policy number 56/10/23/95.
Great, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And the second required or recommended motion, Councillor Thames.
Mr. Mayor, that council repeals private use of a municipal equipment policy number 7S-791026.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. DeBona.
Item 611, policies proposed for repeal, Mr. Armfield.
Yes, we have another number of policies. Ms. Phillips.
So as with Ms. DeBona, we have 3 policies I'm proposing for repeal. The tourist overflow area policy is a policy that's no longer used by the town. The Community Center for Emergency Use policy is now incorporated in the municipal emergency plan, and the use of computerized message center policy has been replaced by the electronic sign policy.
Questions arising? Someone prepared to make a motion, Councillor Firth.
Mr. Mayor, I move the council repeals the tourist overflow area policy 37C-2/22/88.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. The second recommended motion, Councillor Brown.
Mr. Mayor, the council repeals the Community Center for Emergency Use Policy 9C-84315.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And the third required recommended motion, Councillor Garner.
Mr. Mayor, I can make that motion. The council repeals the use of computerized message center policy 84M-87210.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 612, policy proposed for repeal again, Mr. Armfield.
Ms. Monks. We only have about another 35 of these to do, so we're getting closer.
We're getting there. Your Worship and members of Council, Administration proposes to repeal 3 policies that are under the purview of the Planning and Economic Development Department. 2 of the 3 related to the Econ 1 policy that was reviewed by Council and thankfully approved. The third is the Local Improvements Non-Residential Zones policy, which has not been utilized in some time and now falls under Section 634 of the Municipal Government Act. So in the case where we were going to provide for local improvements and have the associated landowners pay for them, we would then follow the process of a redevelopment levy to ensure that all parties were aware of the costs and then they would be recovered in that manner. Because we feel that these 3 policies are now accurately reflected under new structure, we would request the council repeal them in order to meet the goals outlined in our strategic plan.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Thames.
Mr. Mayor, I move that council repeals policy 15C-396/82 application for subdivision on the purchase of town-owned lands.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And the next recommended motion, Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move the council repeals policy 53M-82830, land sale policies, residential, industrial/commercial.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And the third recommended motion, Councillor Firth.
Mr. Mayor, I move the council repeals policy 71C/05/28/01, local improvements, non-residential zones.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to item 613. Once again, policies proposed for repeal, Mr. Armfield.
Yes, I see Ms. Dam coming up to present the next 2 policies. Please go ahead.
Ms. Dam.
Thank you, members of council. Administration is requesting the repeals of policy 79S-585/92 and policy 35C-434/87. The non-sufficient funds is already covered in our fee bylaw, and the review of accounts policy is a policy of a process that no longer exists.
All right, thank you. Questions arising? Someone prepared to make a motion? First recommended motion. Councillor Chavez.
I'll make the first motion that council repeals NSF's checks policy number 79S-585/92 as recommended.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. The second recommended motion, Councillor Firth.
Mr. Mayor, I move that council repeals review of accounts policy number 35C-434/87 as recommended.
Great, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to item 614, set item council requests. Mr. Armfeldt.
This is the opportunity that council has to ask administration any questions or give us any direction through the form of a motion.
All right, thank you. Any items arising? Councillor Stravas.
Your Worship, something that I've been thinking about for some time is that as council is represented on most boards in the community, library, chamber, different ones, but we have no representation on the museum board, and perhaps that's something that we should take under advisement on a go-forward basis and see if we shouldn't be having a little more input into the museum and the history of the community.
All right. Any other discussion, suggestion? Mr. Armfeldt, you just need a motion related to that same ask?
We could, I always like to have some direction, the official direction from council, so I'm always going to answer yes, please put that in the form of a motion. It helps us with who we should be talking to or the efforts that we should be beginning to do. That would likely require a bylaw, but I wouldn't want to presuppose that we shouldn't approach the museum and ask them if they would like a council member to sit on their board. Or maybe that's already happened and I don't know about it. So those are the types of things that if a motion is passed, it gives me the hint of exactly where to start.
It's just a question off the top. I don't know if you can answer this for sure, but or maybe Councillor Stravas. What does the board consist of now? Are you aware of that?
I'm not really sure, to be honest with you. I don't know. I know there's people on the board, but I don't, I can't answer that.
Okay. All right, fair enough. All right, then I guess we're looking for a motion in that regard with your ask. Councillor Stravas, you want to craft something appropriate?
Sure, I can make a very simple motion that council directs administration to contact the museum to look at the feasibility of whether or not a council member should be on the museum board.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Any other standing item requests come to mind? Seeing none, no motion required for information, correct? Just carry on.
That's correct.
All right. All right. With that, that's the end of our open session agenda. Just on to, there are no delegations. Meeting inquiries. Tabor Times. Trevor. Perfect. Thank you. With that, I would be asking for a motion to adjourn for the 30-minute meal break. Councillor Thames.
Mayor, move that we adjourn for a 30-minute meeting break and reconvene in closed session.
All right, very good. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.